Girls hating on Caitlin Clark. Y'all petty girls.
Charles Barkley doesn't hold back. Never has. Never will. But what he said about Caitlin Clark, it stopped the entire sports world mid-scroll. Not because it was controversial, because it was true. And nobody, not the analysts, not the former players, not the league itself, had the guts to say it out loud. Until Chuck did. "They're jealous of her," he said on national television. "And it's embarrassing." The room went silent. The internet exploded. And suddenly everyone had an opinion. But here's what most people missed in the chaos. Barkley wasn't just defending Caitlin Clark. He was exposing a truth about women's basketball that's been whispered in locker rooms, hinted at in post-game interviews, and carefully avoided by every major media outlet for months. A truth about resentment. About gatekeeping. About what happens when one person's light is so bright, it forces everyone else to confront their own shadows. You see, Caitlin Clark didn't just break records in her rookie WNBA season. She broke something else. Something far more fragile. The unspoken hierarchy. The code of paying your dues. The idea that success should be gradual, humble, quiet. Clark arrived like a supernova. Immediate. Undeniable. Unapologetic. And some people in the league? They hated her for it. Not all of them. But enough. Enough that the tension became visible. Enough that flagrant fouls started looking personal. Enough that post-game handshakes felt ice cold. Enough that social media shade became a weekly ritual. Charles Barkley saw it. We all saw it. But he's the one who said it. And what happened next revealed more about the state of women's basketball than any statistic ever could. Because when Chuck spoke up, the responses split into two camps. Those who exhaled in relief, finally someone said it, and those who attacked him for daring to speak on women's sports at all. But here's the thing about Charles Barkley, he doesn't care about being liked. He cares about being honest. And his honesty? It just ripped open a conversation the WNBA desperately needed to have. This isn't just about one comment. This is about what that comment exposed. About the forces working against the league's biggest star. About why some players seemed more interested in humbling Caitlin Clark than celebrating what she was doing for the sport. And about why, when the spotlight finally arrived, some people tried to dim it instead of stepping into it. You ready for this? Because what Charles Barkley said was just the beginning. The real story is what happened after he said it. Let's go back to that moment. April 2024. The WNBA draft. Caitlin Clark walks across the stage as the #1 overall pick. And the cameras aren't just rolling, they're everywhere. 2.45 million viewers. Let that sink in. The previous record? 601,000. She didn't just break it. She obliterated it. And in that moment, something shifted in the room. You could feel it. Some people were cheering. Others were watching, calculating, wondering what this meant for them. Because here's the uncomfortable truth about sudden success. It exposes everyone around it. The veterans who'd spent years grinding in empty arenas. The players who'd never gotten this kind of attention. The media personalities who'd spent a decade covering a league that barely registered on the national radar. Suddenly, a rookie was getting coverage they'd never received. Endorsement deals they'd never seen. A spotlight they'd never stood in. And some of them? They weren't happy. You saw it in the way Chindi Carter hip-checked Clark to the ground, then refused to answer questions post-game. No apology. No accountability. Just defiance. You saw it in the way veteran players dodged questions about Clark's impact, offering lukewarm praise that said everything their words wouldn't. You saw it in the subtle digs on social media, the eye rolls caught on camera, the cold handshakes at center court. This wasn't normal rookie hazing. This was something different. Something personal. Charles Barkley watched it all unfold. And unlike everyone else tiptoeing around the obvious, he named it. It's jealousy, he said flatly. These women, they should be thanking Caitlin Clark for getting them all this attention. Instead, they're jealous. The backlash was immediate. How would you know, Chuck? Stay in your lane. You don't understand women's sports. But here's what critics missed. Barkley understood something they didn't. He understood human nature. He'd seen it before. In the NBA. In every locker room where someone rose too fast, too bright, too soon. He knew that insecurity doesn't announce itself politely. It shows up as aggression. As resentment dressed up as earning your stripes. As criticism disguised as tough love. And he knew that the WNBA had a choice to make. Embrace the moment, or let petty jealousy sabotage the biggest opportunity the league had ever seen. Because here's the part that matters. While some players were busy resenting Caitlin Clark, she was busy changing everything for them. The charter flights they'd been begging for? Suddenly approved mid-season. The media attention they'd craved for decades? Suddenly everywhere. The sponsors, the ratings, the sold-out arenas, all of it traceable to one person. And yet, some players still couldn't bring themselves to say her name with respect. That tension? It built, week after week, until it exploded in a way nobody expected. June 1st, 2024. Indiana Fever versus Chicago Sky. The game that changed everything. Caitlin Clark is bringing the ball up the court when it happens. Chindy Carter, unprovoked, lowers her shoulder and slams into Clark from behind. It's not a basketball play. It's a message. Clark hits the ground hard. The crowd gasps. And the replay shows what millions would watch over and over again. A veteran player taking out frustration on a rookie who'd done nothing but play basketball. Carter's teammate, Angel Reese, jumps off the bench cheering, celebrating the hit like a knockout punch. The cameras caught it all. And that's when Charles Barkley went from observer to truth teller. "This is straight up jealousy," he said on Inside the NBA, "and it's killing the game. These women should be embracing what Caitlin's doing for the league. Instead, they're acting petty, and it's embarrassing to watch." Shaquille O'Neal nodded in agreement. "She's bringing eyeballs. She's bringing money. And they're treating her like the enemy." Kenny Smith added, "Imagine if NBA vets treated LeBron like this when he came in. We'd have called it what it was, insecurity." But here's where it gets interesting. Because when Barkley spoke up, the response wasn't unified support. It was divided. Half the sports world applauded him. Finally, someone with a platform is saying what we've all been thinking. The other half attacked. Men need to stay out of women's sports. Chuck doesn't understand the culture. This is just misogyny dressed up as concern. But was it? Or was it the opposite? Someone refusing to lower the standard just because it involved women? Because here's what the critics missed. Barkley wasn't being condescending. He was holding the WNBA to the same standard he'd hold any professional league. When NBA players act petty, he calls them out. When they sabotage their own success, he calls them out. When they let ego destroy opportunity, he calls them out. Why should women's basketball be any different? The truth is, some people didn't want honesty. They wanted protection from criticism. They wanted Caitlin Clark's success without having to confront their own feelings about it. And Barkley refused to play along. "She's selling out arenas," he continued. "She's getting people to watch who never watched before. And instead of capitalizing on that, some of these players are busy trying to humble her. It's backwards." He was right. The numbers proved it. When the Fever played on the road, opposing teams had to move games to bigger arenas just to handle the ticket demand. The Washington Mystics moved their game against Indiana to Capital One Arena. 20,333 fans showed up. The biggest WNBA crowd in 17 years. They weren't there to see the Mystics. They were there to see Caitlin Clark. And yet, some players still acted like she was the problem. Diana Taurasi, one of the league's all-time greats, gave Clark the coldest welcome imaginable before the season even started. "Reality is coming," she said with a smirk, hinting that Clark's college success wouldn't translate. Clark proceeded to break the rookie assist record, the rookie scoring record in a game, and lead the Fever to the playoffs for the first time in 8 years. Taurasi's response? Silence. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some legends don't want to be surpassed. Some veterans don't want to share the spotlight. Some players want progress, but only if they're the ones driving it. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for permission. She didn't wait her turn. She didn't play small to make others comfortable. And that's what terrified them. Because if one rookie could change everything in a single season, what did that say about the decades before her? Charles Barkley understood that fear, and he refused to coddle it. But the most powerful moment? It wasn't what he said on TV. It was what happened when other voices started joining him. The floodgates opened. After Barkley spoke, others found their courage. Monica McNutt, a former college basketball player turned ESPN analyst, didn't hold back. "There's a difference," she said on First Take, "between competitive fire and targeted hostility. What we're seeing with Caitlin isn't hazing. It's resentment." Stephen A. Smith backed her up. "If this was the NBA and veterans were gunning for a rookie like this, we'd call it what it is: bitter, scared, threatened." Even Sue Bird, WNBA legend and usually diplomatic, had to acknowledge it. "The league has to decide," she said carefully, "whether we're going to build on this moment or tear it down from the inside." But the most powerful voice? It came from someone unexpected. Cheryl Swoops, Hall of Famer, 3-time MVP, WNBA icon. And someone who'd spent months publicly downplaying Caitlin Clark's college career, questioning her achievements, even getting basic stats wrong in interviews, stats that anyone could Google. The bias was so obvious, it became a storyline of its own. But then something shifted. In a late-season interview, Swoops finally softened. What Caitlin's doing for the game, she admitted reluctantly, is undeniable. It wasn't a full endorsement. But from someone who'd been subtly undermining Clark for months, it was significant. Because it proved Charles Barkley's point. This was jealousy. And the evidence wasn't just in the hard fouls. It was in the subtle dismissals. The downplaying of achievements. The refusal to celebrate what was objectively historic. Caitlin Clark became the WNBA's all-time rookie scoring leader. Some veterans shrugged. She broke the single-season assist record as a rookie. Barely a mention. She led the Fever to the playoffs after they'd been the league's worst team the year before. The narrative? The whole team improved. Every accomplishment came with an asterisk in certain people's minds. And Charles Barkley was the one who ripped those asterisks away. "Stop it," he said bluntly in a later segment. "Just stop. Give the girl her credit. She's earned it." And here's where the story takes its most important turn. Because while the debates raged on TV, something else was happening in the real world. The fans didn't care about the politics. They didn't care about the hierarchy. They didn't care who was threatened or uncomfortable. They just wanted to watch Caitlin Clark play basketball. And they showed up in numbers the WNBA had never seen. The Fever's final regular season game against the Washington Mystics drew 20,711 fans, a WNBA record. The atmosphere was electric. Little girls wore Clark jerseys. Entire families filled the stands. People who'd never watched women's basketball were suddenly invested. One father told a reporter, "My daughter asked to come. Now she wants to play point guard. That's because of Caitlin." That's the legacy Charles Barkley was defending. Not just stats. Not just highlights. The impact. Because here's what the jealous players didn't understand. Caitlin Clark wasn't taking anything from them. She was giving them something they'd fought for their entire careers. Relevance. Visibility. A seat at the table of mainstream American sports. The charter flights the WNBA Players Association had been requesting for years? Approved in May 2024, right when Clark mania peaked. Coincidence? Please. The record-breaking media rights deal the league signed? Directly tied to skyrocketing viewership. Viewership driven by one player. The sold-out arenas, the primetime broadcasts, the ESPN features, the athlete sponsorships that suddenly became real money? All of it traced back to number 22. And still, some players couldn't bring themselves to say thank you. That's what hurt Charles Barkley. Not as an analyst, as someone who loves the game. "They're shooting themselves in the foot," he said, shaking his head. "They're getting everything they've wanted, and instead of running with it, they're fighting the person who delivered it." But here's the final twist. While the critics were busy debating Barkley's right to have an opinion, Caitlin Clark just kept playing. Kept breaking records. Kept selling out arenas. Kept proving that the spotlight wasn't a fluke. And in the process, she did something even more powerful than winning over her doubters. She made them irrelevant. September 2024. The playoffs. This is where legends are supposed to be made. Where rookies are supposed to crumble under pressure. Where veterans are supposed to remind everyone why experience matters. Caitlin Clark had other plans. Game 1 versus the Connecticut Sun, a team that hadn't lost at home all season. The Fever were heavy underdogs. Nobody gave them a chance. Clark dropped 11 assists, controlled the tempo, made veterans look ordinary. The Sun won the series, but it didn't matter. The statement was made. This rookie, the one some players spent all season trying to humble, had just taken a last-place team to the playoffs and went toe-to-toe with championship contenders. Charles Barkley watched it all with the knowing smile of someone who'd been proven right. "I told y'all," he said simply. "She's special." And the people who couldn't see it were too busy being jealous to notice history happening right in front of them. But here's where the story gets its most satisfying conclusion. Because while Barkley was being vindicated, the WNBA was quietly undergoing a transformation. The league announced expanded playoff coverage, more national TV games, increased investment in marketing, better travel accommodations, higher salary caps on the horizon. All of it powered by the momentum Caitlin Clark created. The players who resented her? They cashed the checks that her popularity generated. The veterans who dismissed her? They played in front of crowds they'd never seen before. The analysts who doubted her? They covered games that drew ratings they didn't think were possible. Caitlin Clark changed women's basketball forever. Not in a decade. Not over a career. In one season. And Charles Barkley made sure nobody could pretend otherwise. See, here's what makes Barkley different from other analysts. He doesn't care about being politically correct. He cares about being right. He saw what was happening, the petty fouls, the cold shoulders, the subtle undermining, and he called it out. Not because he wanted to embarrass anyone, because he wanted the WNBA to win. You know how rare this is? He said in his final segment on the topic. How rare it is to get someone who can move the needle like this. The NBA has had maybe 5 or 6 players in history who could do what Caitlin's doing. And some of these women are acting like she's a problem. It's insane. Shaq jumped in, Chuck's right. When Tiger Woods showed up, golf embraced him. When LeBron came in, the NBA built around him. You don't fight your golden goose. You protect it. And that's the lesson the WNBA is finally learning. By season's end, the narrative shifted. More players started publicly acknowledging Clark's impact. More veterans started mentoring instead of marginalizing. More voices started celebrating instead of criticizing. Not all of them. Some people will never give credit where it's due. But enough changed that the league's trajectory bent toward progress instead of pettiness. Diana Taurasi, who'd warned Clark about reality, was asked late in the season about the rookie's impact. She paused, smiled slightly. The game's in good hands, she said. That's as close to an apology as legends give. And Caitlin Clark? She never needed the apology. She just kept playing, kept winning, kept proving that talent doesn't ask for permission. The final numbers tell the story better than words ever could. 54 million unique viewers. A WNBA record. 22 games with over 1 million viewers. Clark played in 19 of them. The 7 most watched WNBA games in ESPN history. All in 2024. All featuring number 22. One rookie. One season. One undeniable, unavoidable, impossible to ignore truth. Caitlin Clark didn't just change women's basketball. She saved it. And Charles Barkley? He made sure the people trying to tear her down couldn't rewrite history. Because that's what great analysts do. They don't just report what happened. They defend what matters. Barkley saw jealousy disguised as toughness. He saw gatekeeping disguised as tradition. He saw insecurity disguised as skepticism. And he refused to play along. Y'all should be thanking her, he said one last time. Not just the players. The fans, the owners, the media. Everybody. Because she did in 6 months what the league couldn't do in 25 years. He's right. The WNBA had been waiting for a moment like this. A player like this. A cultural shift like this. And when it finally arrived, some people tried to reject it because it didn't come the way they expected. But Caitlin Clark didn't wait for approval. She didn't wait for acceptance. She didn't wait for permission. She just hooped. And in doing so, she forced everyone, the doubters, the haters, the jealous veterans, the reluctant legends, to confront an uncomfortable truth. The future doesn't ask the past if it's ready. It just arrives. And if you're too bitter to embrace it, you'll be left behind. Charles Barkley understood that. That's why he spoke up. That's why he didn't back down. That's why his words will echo longer than any highlight. Because he wasn't just defending Caitlin Clark. He was defending progress. And that's what nobody dared to say. Until Chuck did. But here's the part of the story nobody's talking about. The part that happens after the cameras stop rolling. After the season ends. After the highlights fade. What happened to Caitlin Clark when the spotlight finally dimmed? Did she crumble under the pressure? Did the jealousy break her? Did the constant targeting, the cold shoulders, the subtle disrespect, did it finally get to her? No, she got better. December 2024. Off-season. Most rookies are resting, recovering, trying to process the whirlwind of their first professional season. Caitlin Clark is in the gym, training harder, studying film, working on the weaknesses opponents exposed. Because here's what separates good players from generational ones. Good players survive their rookie season. Great players learn from it. And the league is about to find out just how much she learned. Because while some veterans spent the offseason on podcasts explaining why Clark's success was overhyped, she was adding weapons to her game. A tighter handle, a quicker release, better defensive positioning. Everything the critics said she couldn't do, she's fixing it. And Charles Barkley? He's watching with the biggest smile. I can't wait for next season, he said in a recent interview. Because all those players who thought they humbled her, they just made her hungrier. He paused. Let that sink in. And that's the thing about greatness. You can't bully it into submission. You can only motivate it. The WNBA is about to learn that lesson the hard way. Because Caitlin Clark's rookie season wasn't the peak. It was the foundation. She proved she could handle the pressure. She proved she could fill arenas. She proved she could change the culture of an entire league. Now, she's coming back to prove she can dominate it. And when she does, the players who spent 2024 trying to tear her down will have to make a choice. Embrace the revolution she's leading, or get left behind by it. Charles Barkley already knows which one they'll choose, because he's seen this story before. In every sport, in every generation, when greatness arrives, there are always doubters, always critics, always people too threatened to celebrate what's happening in front of them. But greatness doesn't need their approval. It just needs the ball. And Caitlin Clark? She's about to do something even more dangerous than having a historic rookie season. She's about to have a sophomore season. One where she's not the underdog anymore. One where she's not the curiosity. One where she's not the rookie everyone's testing. She's the target, the standard, the player everyone in the league is preparing for. And if you thought year one was special, just wait. Because the thing about Caitlin Clark that terrifies her competition isn't her talent. It's her memory. She remembers every hard foul, every dismissive comment, every veteran who refused to shake her hand, every analyst who said she was overrated, every player who celebrated when she got knocked down. She remembers it all. And she's going to use it as fuel. Charles Barkley knows this. That's why he keeps talking about her. That's why he keeps defending her. That's why he refuses to let the narrative shift. Because he understands something the haters don't. You can't stop a movement by targeting its leader. You can only make the movement stronger. The WNBA tried to humble Caitlin Clark in 2024. Instead, they built a legend. And legends? They don't fade. They don't quit. They don't apologize for being great. They just keep proving everyone wrong. Season after season after season. Until the doubters are silenced. Until the haters are irrelevant. Until the only thing left to say is the truth Charles Barkley has been saying all along. She's the real deal. She always was. And if you couldn't see it, that says more about you than it does about her. The 2025 WNBA season tips off in May. Caitlin Clark will be ready. The question is, will the league be ready for her? Because the rookie who changed everything is about to show what happens when you give greatness a second act. And Charles Barkley will be watching, smiling, waiting to say 4 words he's been saving. I told you so. This is more than a sports story. This is a legacy being written in real time. And the best part? We're still on chapter 1.